Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is the Aspen City Council regular meeting for December 12th, 2023. Could we have a roll call for attendance, please?
Councillor Doyle.
Here.
Councillor Guth.
Here.
Councillor Howenstein.
Here.
Councillor Rose.
Here.
Mayor Tory.
Here. On our agenda, that brings us to citizens' comments and petitions. It's an opportunity to address council on issues that are not scheduled for a public hearing this evening, and we ask that you limit your comments to about 3 minutes so everybody has a fair and equal opportunity to speak. Are there members of the public that are in the room that would like to speak at this time? Sure, come on up.
You prefer a seat?
No.
Mike Maple. Thank goodness for Tabor. I know last night you all were talking about mill levies, and it's easy to tax people, but some of us have to pay those taxes, and I don't really enjoy it. And as your presentation last night pointed out, lower cost homes experience the greatest appreciation. In the Maples, 2 houses in town increased by about 45% in assessed value. That doesn't create wealth for me. That creates liabilities for me in the form of taxes. And so you seem to be on track for limiting your general mill to only the Tabor allowed amount, but that's still 8%. It's a big number. My income didn't go up 8%, but combined with the valuation of some of these houses that you all, as part of tonight's discussion, claim that you're trying to save, you are making it more and more difficult for us to live here by continuing to raise taxes. So I encourage you to take a close look at the taxes you're charging your citizens, not just at the limits that are imposed by Tabor, but also at the things that you have discretion on. I'm sure you all can always spend money. I'm absolutely certain of it, but you don't have to spend money. So use your taxpayers' dollars carefully and collect revenue carefully. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Other members of the public for public comment this evening? Looking online as well? Another call for citizen comment tonight? All right, bring it back to council table. It's an opportunity for council members' comments this evening. Sam, sure, go right ahead.
Thanks, Tori. Quick comment I just want to say I was thankful to Scott and the memo in the information packet about plowing bike paths. I appreciate that experiment going on. Hopefully it works out for those that asked for it. The other thing I wanted to ask maybe Sarah, if there was an update on when the signs for Main Street were going to be put up for the new parking limits there? Or is that another Scott question or someone else? Sorry.
I'm looking to Public Works staff.
My understanding is the signs are just getting finished up from the manufacturer, and we should have them up in the next week or so.
Okay, great. That's what I was looking for. Thank you so much, Tyler. And then I guess the last thing, with no public comment here tonight from BG3 owners, that I was hoping that we had done what we need to do at the council table for them. But if there's anything else that we need to do, please let us know. You know how to reach us via email. But I'm excited for you all to move in to your new homes.
Thanks, Sam. Bill?
Thanks. Also echo what Sam said on the pedestrian bikeway or ped bikeway experiment, and looking forward to increasing the level of service there. Thank you for the quick action on that, and very supportive of that. Also in our info memo was an analysis of the 2 intersections of Durant, I think Garmisch and Aspen, thank you. Knowing the street names is not my strong suit. And I'm supportive of staff's findings in that. Thank you for taking a look at that. And lastly, regarding Burlingame, again, want to make sure that that the city is standing behind its role as developer that it chose to establish and take, and providing warranties to the buyers that I believe they deserve, standing behind the product that it is developed. And also echo what Sam said on if there's further action that's needed from us as a body, both from the public or buyers and or the public not feeling like they're getting what they need and deserve, and from staff, please bring it back to us. We all want to get people in their homes and want those homes to be good quality homes and want the buying experience to be a good experience for those buyers. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Ward, comments this evening?
Yeah, the last meeting of the year for us, I want to take an opportunity to thank 300-plus city employees that we task and they carry out and implement. And so I'm deeply appreciative of all of the efforts of everybody on staff for your efforts. And in these troubling and turbulent times, I have just these words to say: peace on earth and goodwill to men.
Thanks, Ward. John?
I just want to thank the new BG3 owners for their patience throughout this process. I know it hasn't been easy, and I also would like to thank staff for all the work they do to achieve the city's goals. Thank you.
Thanks, John. My comments this evening are along the same lines. I want to just tell everybody that I'm extremely thankful for the people that I work with. Obviously, the staff, management, council members. This has been a tumultuous and sometimes difficult year, and through all of it, it has been nothing but an honor to be sitting up here in this position. And I just want to say to everybody that I thank you very much. I appreciate you. Hope you have a wonderful holiday and a happy new year. We'll see you in January back at the table. Some of us still do have a couple of other board meetings that we're attending over the next couple of weeks, so we're not actually done, but nonetheless, I just want to express my gratitude to everybody. 2023 will be a year to be remembered. I hope I remember it. With that, I don't see any agenda amendments this evening, and it brings us to city manager's comments tonight.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I want to let you know we've had multiple closings at Burlingame in the last 2 days, and folks are moving in. And that we have, again, re-inspected all of the units to ensure that they're ready for buyers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any quick board reports for this evening?
Now we have our last meeting of APSHA tomorrow.
Same here. I am attending RAFTA board meeting on Thursday morning.
And there's also a core wrap-up meeting next Monday.
With that, it'll bring us to the consent calendar. The consent calendar tonight is resolution number 167, a contract with Avocette Technologies, resolution number 175, the 2024 regional, state, and federal policy agenda. Resolution number 183, a dump truck fleet replacement for parks. Resolution number 184, contract with Barbizon Light of the Rockies for theatrical rigging. Resolution number 186, a Fourth Amendment to the city manager contract. Resolution number 187, the City of Aspen flag policy. And the draft minutes of September 26th. Are there any items that people wish to pull for further discussion or questions? Could take a motion for the consent calendar this evening.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote for the consent calendar, please?
Counselor Doyle?
Yes.
Counselor Guth?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes. That'll bring us to first reading of ordinances tonight. This is ordinance number 26, 216 West Hyman Avenue, establishment of transferable development rights. As they're coming to the table, I could take a motion for reading of ordinance number 26.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir?
before you do that, Mr. Doyle has spoken to me earlier about his need to recuse himself for this. So,
Ciao for now.
With that, I could take a motion to read.
I'll make a motion to read ordinance number 26.
Second.
Thank you. A motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote for reading of ordinance number 26?
Counselor Guth,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Rose.
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes.
Ordinance number 26, series of 2023, an ordinance of the City of Aspen City Council approving the establishment of transferable development rights for the property located at 216 West Hyman Avenue, lots O and P, Block 53, City and Townside of Aspen, Colorado.
Good evening. Stuart Hayden, Historic Preservation Planner for the city. And this evening, I'd like to convey the Historic Preservation Commission's recommendation that City Council approve the creation of up to 2 TDRs from 216 West Hyman Avenue. Accordingly, I've prepared a presentation to provide additional context for this first reading of Ordinance 26, series of 2023, but want to give Council the opportunity to skip it and defer to the memo at this time and wait for the public hearing and the applicant's presentation at the second reading of the ordinance, during which I'll also be available for questions and answers if you have anything. So if you'd like to see my presentation, I can get into it. Otherwise,
I think Stuart's PowerPoint skills are second to none, but regardless of that, I'm happy to skip it.
no offense taken.
I'm good skipping it, too.
Are there any questions that anybody has for second reading?
I thought we already severed TDRs from this property.
You have, yeah. So those were two that were done previously earlier this year, and so these are for 2 additional TDRs from this property.
I can wait till second reading.
I move to approve ordinance number 26 on first reading.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote for ordinance number 26 on first reading?
Counselor Guth,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Rose.
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes. Thank you.
Good work.
Send John back.
Thanks, Ann.
Not going to hang out, Ann? All right, then. That'll bring us to our public hearing. Yeah, send John back in.
Mr. Mayor, is it okay if I share my screen?
Please do. Hi, Ben.
Hello.
Happy Tuesday.
To you too.
Thank you.
There we go. Ready to roll?
Sure.
Okay, great. Mr. Mayor and Council, for the record, Ben Anderson, with Community Development. I'm here for second reading of ordinance number 23, series of 2023. This is an ordinance that, in the last several meetings, we've done a policy resolution and first reading. On a fairly compressed schedule, admittedly, but it's a fairly limited ordinance in terms of its scope. It does not, I'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of what it does, but intentionally very narrow in scope because of the timing of it. Staff believes that this amendment will allow us to bring greater process and improve clarity of the issuance of the available 2024 allotments. And staff also is very clear that a majority of council would like a full discussion of the program and intends to return to council in early 2024 with a work session for this specific purpose. The current status of the program, just to frame any conversation that happens this evening, there have been 16 allotments issued, all of 2022 allotments, 2023 allotments, and 4 issued from 2024. As of present. There are 2 allotments that are currently available for 2024 that would be subject to this amended application process. At last tracking, ComDev has received building permits for 5 or 6 of the issued allotments. At this time, permits are just starting to be issued, and staff does not believe that any projects have been physically initiated. Also, kind of pertinent to some council discussion, the Green Halo program is set up and ready for these projects. This is the software program that the county is using for their construction and demolition waste diversion. They've had great success with it, and we're set up for these projects when they do come in and start physical work. And then I will also just say, again, I think to some of the comments that have happened at the council table, the projects that are coming in are now subject to the 2021 Building and Energy Code adoption that we passed earlier this year. So I say those last 2 things just to bring to council's attention that some of the outcomes that the demolition program was pursuing are in place. And on one, we're still specifically just applying the construction and waste diversion requirements on these demolition projects. They're not part of the larger building permit program, but as is the case with all things now coming in through building permit, these projects are subject to the recently adopted building and energy codes.
Can you?
Yeah.
Could you just help me a little bit? Can you speak to that 3rd bullet point? I don't understand the wording. ComDev has received building permits for 5. I don't understand that. I don't know the process that well, but what does that mean?
So anytime we do a development review that requires a land use review, there's a couple steps to the process. They receive a demolition allotment through a land use approval. And then when the project is ready, they come in for building permit. And so they've submitted building permits. These building permits are at some point in the review process. I know for a fact that a couple of them are very ready to issue. And so it's about receiving, there's a review process, obviously. These are complex homes that take some time and, reviews between our staff and the applicant. And at some point, those permits are issued. And so to my understanding, these 5 or 6 of the issued allotments have pursued a building permit and are in some point of review, perhaps issuance, and some of these, the status might have changed very recently. But to our knowledge, none of them have been physically initiated.
John?
Can you remind me, Ben, how many allotments have been issued so far?
16 in total.
16 total, thanks.
And Ben, why do you say 5 or 6? How is that?
It's an imprecision, and I'll be honest with you. I did this and needed to look back at the spreadsheet, but it's some relatively small, maybe a third of what's actually been issued. But it was just an imprecision.
That isn't a hard statistic you could determine.
Absolutely. I have it at my fingertips, and I was putting slides together. I probably need to go back into the permit system to get a precise number, but it's there.
Thanks. John?
Sorry, just a quick follow-up question. This program was initiated in August of 2022?
Yes. The Ordinance 13, which created this program, came into effect in August of 2022. I think the initial applications were on August 8th of 2022. After the moratorium, the primary moratorium amendment dealing with residential building came into effect.
So we have issued 16 allotments in only a year and 4 months.
That's correct.
Thanks. That's important to me.
Thanks, Ben.
Okay. At first reading, we had a request for some additional information based on a conversation that I think first emerged during public outreach, during the moratorium work, when we were starting to discuss with the public the idea of the demolition allotment process. A member of the public came forward with kind of a rough analysis of how they understood Aspen's market rate, single-family and duplex housing stock. That conversation continued into Planning and Zoning Commission. I think you recently received a comment from one of the members of our Planning and Zoning Commission who was present for that conversation. When we were having the conversation, I think we were talking about very rough numbers. We have north of 6,300 housing units in the city of Aspen. When you start pulling off the things that are not subject to this set of policies, you start to get down to about 1,300 or 1,400 units, and all of this is out of the assessor's record. And to be fair, I do think that ComDev needs to pull the very complex assessor record apart a little bit more to try to get at some precise information here. But 1,300 or 1,400 total single-family and duplex properties that are not Victorian, not Aspen Modern, not hard protected by one of our other regulations that would preclude demolition. I looked at one of the columns that's available in the assessor's record is looking at sort of the actual year built. In talking with some folks at the assessor's office, those numbers are pretty good, but they're not precise. And so we have roughly 800 market rate single-family duplex buildings. I picked 1950 because most of the things before then, have some kind of special importance. Some of them are very hard protected either under the Victorian or the Aspen Modern program. And I went to 1995, again, a fairly arbitrary number, but it was a number to stop a house that's, roughly 30 years old at this point. And we have roughly 800 of those of single-family and duplex units that were built, at least according to the assessor's records, between 1950 and 1995. I think when this conversation happened during the moratorium work, we think it's important to understand this dynamic, and we looked at it. We talked about it with our consultant team, and looking at different homes and trying to sort of evaluate different homes that were built at different periods of time, and sort of use sort of the year that they were built as a mechanism to sort of give priority to demolition or see them as appropriate for demolition. A couple of things that, as we talked about it, it's kind of based then on the assumption that all homes need to be demolished at some point. Some homes are built better than others. I think if this ethic were understood around our Victorians, at some point in our history, we wouldn't have a single Victorian standing in town. And so, I do think that it is based on that assumption. And I do also think that differentiating, and this was our primary concern about trying to sort of analyze this or do some sort of analysis of how long things would take to sort of go through. I think the dynamic that Councilmember Guth was trying to get at in his question. I think it's a difficult thing to try to understand this. Homes of the same vintage are often built very differently and are difficult to sort of differentiate between them. I'm happy to talk about that further, but I do think it's a difficult thing to, I think, fairly evaluate because of the complexity in our housing stock.
Thanks, Ben, for putting this together. Can you help me understand why 1995 was the end stopping point?
It was an arbitrary number. I think we've had some conversations with folks that are intending to pursue demolition on homes that have been built since then. But I would suggest that building codes were such, and the housing products that were built in the 1990s may be of a different style, but I think they were well built. They were subject to not our most current energy codes, but I think they were subject to a fairly high building standard at the time that were closely inspected and were quality built homes. It was an arbitrary number. I would say, if you want to go to 2023, take that 800 number up to someplace between 1,300 and 1,400.
Yeah, because what I'm trying to get at is what this program implies is the average lifespan of a home. I'm not asking for your rationale behind it, but I want everyone to understand what this program implies is that lifespan. Yeah. Not saying that you agree with it or disagree with it, but so I do think we need to use the 1,300 or 1,400 number. I think that's relevant.
Yeah. I will say one data point that there's, when you look at an assessor's record on a particular property, there's an actual year built and then an effective year built. And I think I had more faith in the accuracy of that effective year built. I assumed it was when a house went through a major renovation, whether it was a Victorian that got redeveloped at some point or a home built during 1950 and 1995 that's gone through a more significant remodel. I've come to understand that those dates are not reliable within the assessor's database. They're horseshoes and hand grenades close, but they're not precise. And so I do think that another dynamic to sort of understand this is, in these homes that were built that have, in the last, say, 10 years, gone through a significant remodel that are fundamentally a different home, we have a lot of those. Does that change our equation on how we think about a property? So again, I think it's a complex topic. I certainly understand the question that you're sort of asking. I'll think a little bit more between now and when we talk about this program again to think about how we can sort of pull apart the assessor's records a little bit more to think about this dynamic. But again, I just think you're almost evaluating, when it gets down to it, whether or not a house is, ready for demolition from a need perspective rather than a desire or want perspective, which again isn't part of my thinking necessarily. Those dynamics, I think, are complicated to evaluate.
Yeah, and I don't want to evaluate them.
Yeah.
I want to take all subjectivity out of this, Ben. I don't know that we will ever get clarity on what every single assessor's criteria was for changing the effective date versus the actual date. Right? It's just too long of a history with too many people, and I doubt it's codified.
Yeah.
So I want to take all subjectivity out of it. And on that note, I'm curious why you chose to sort of defend this and dissect it to this nature. I really just want to know how this program computes an implied lifespan of homes in Aspen. That's all I'm curious about. And you chose to dissect it and defend it in a way, and I'm curious about that.
Yeah. I will say that when we thought about this dynamic, it was something that we didn't give a lot of thought to. I think we were much more concerned about the impacts that council told us to be concerned about and to respond to with a policy recommendation. Because I do think that, again, trying to evaluate, the lifespan of a home is a difficult thing, even with a home that was, built in the same year 30 years ago. Some of those were not well built, and some of them will probably be standing 300 years from now. And I think that dynamic is difficult to evaluate from a across the housing stock perspective.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, but that's not what I want to get to here. So I think the math is pretty simple. I think it's, let's say, 1350. Let's pick between 1300 and 1400, because I don't know that you're going to get that much clarity. Maybe you can, and if you can, great. But let's say it's somewhere between 1300 and 1400 divided by 6, and that's the average lifespan. And let's do that math right now. Can't do that one in my head at this hour. But 216.67 years. Thanks.
Again, the effect of this ordinance is very limited. Essentially, it establishes a 30-day application window in January for available annual allotments. The language gives description to the first business day in January. That period would open, and this year it would be January 2nd. In that application window, it would implement a lottery process for the application rather than first come, first served response that's currently in the code that, again, admittedly caused difficulty within the application program or the application process in the last couple of years. The code requires that available allotments that are subject to this lottery would be issued by the end of February at the latest. This code amendment does not change any other aspect of the allotment process or requirements of the demolition allotment program. And additionally, should council desire, it's currently a section in the ordinance as written based on council discussion, both at policy resolution and at first reading, is drafted to grant some number of additional allotments in 2024 that would be available to the lottery process. So staff recommendation this evening is following a discussion on whether to increase the number of 2024 allotments and to what number, if desired. Staff recommends approval of ordinance 2023 at second reading. And staff further recommends that we schedule a work session to discuss the larger program as soon as practicable in 2024.
Thanks, Ben. Are there any questions at this time from council? This is a public hearing, so we're going to open it to the public. All right, this is a public hearing. If there's members of the public that wish to comment this evening on ordinance number 23. Mr. Maple?
I guess the number one comment that I would like to make is that you all do I need to start over again, or can I?
You got it. You were mentioning VI.A. I wanted to stop you before you got into that on.
If you think there's some meat, huh? No, we'll see. In any event, what I was going to say is that you all have known that this program has been a bit of a disaster since August 9th of 2020, what year? 2022. That became increasingly clear over the months that followed. You had a work session on this matter in June, and here we are on December 12th, trying to put a Band-Aid on this process ahead of very, very important decisions for, in many cases, people's biggest assets in a couple of weeks. That's really unfortunate for those of us that own real estate in Aspen. And so my number one request is that you talk about, we'd really like to have a work session about this sooner than later. Set the date. Set the date, get on with it, and set a date to get through it. Because we've been in this for too long already. I do have a number of comments that I'd like to put in about some of the comments that you all have made about the improvements that you would like to make. And my recommendation is to get rid of it. You all have lots of ideas, and some of those ideas are interesting. One of the ideas that many of you like is the idea of increased waste diversion. One of the first questions I would ask you is, what does the county do? It's the county's dump. And what is their program? I know they have a waste diversion program. I couldn't tell you, I don't have the slightest clue what it is, but I would suggest that you ought to be following the owner of the dump and the policies that they think are appropriate rather than creating your own and trying to manage their dump. I would also say that creating waste diversion, it sounds good, but it has unintended consequences. As somebody, if there's a construction project near my home, the thing that I want first and foremost is for it to be done, started, finished as quickly as possible. Waste diversion requires time. Suddenly, depending on the waste diversion programs that are implemented or initiated, it's going to take months or maybe even a year to just do the waste diversion demolition part of a development. If that was happening at a house next to mine, that's a disaster, an absolute disaster. Here again, speed. So my number, when you think about trying to reduce the impacts on neighborhoods, what I am most interested in is speed. Process permits quickly. Require contractors and owners to have a schedule and stick to it. And if they can't get it done, have severe penalties. Digging basements is incredibly impactful. Sometime a number of years ago, the city came up with a program that limited the depth of basements. And I don't pretend to understand it. There's still some damn deep basements getting built, and I can't quite figure out how that's possible. But another thing that's happening is that many basements or foundations are built lot line to lot line, and they're exempt from FAR. For me, I think that's wrong, and a simple solution is to reduce the construction impacts is to not allow basements that are significantly bigger or indeed any bigger than the above ground footprint. Down the hill from my parents' house on Queen Street, oh my God, there's a 40-foot deep hole that is lot line to lot line. It's like a quarter of an acre or something. It's insane. That shouldn't be happening. Some of you are troubled by the lottery process and people being in the lottery process forever. I get it, that's a valid concern. But if you put people on a lottery, losers on a lottery, up next, you're just creating another race. You're saying to us as property owners, you need to run in as quickly as possible, spend $25,000 or $50,000 to submit a demolition allotment application so that you can lose the lottery and then get on a list. And then you're saying to me, and when your number comes up, Mr. Maple, you may have been planning on living in that house for 5 years or 10 years or whenever you decided. But when your number comes up, now that you've won the lottery, you better sell your house. And that's a terrible result. You know, I want to live in my house until I no longer want to live in my house. And when I decide to leave my house, I want to get what is due me by the market. I don't want it to be manipulated by the city council and their regulations. Just leave us alone. You know, tell us what we can do with our property and don't keep changing it. Because every time you change it, it says, you better do something sooner than later. Ward, I appreciate some of your perspectives on permanent residence and the age of houses and whatnot. You know, those are all valid ideas, but they're complicated. I mean, they are so complicated. You know, and, you know, talking about, you know, some of the things that Ben was talking about these ages of these houses and when they were built and whatnot. You know, one of the things that here again, I don't encourage you to spend too much time thinking about this, but houses are different. You know, my house, it arrived on a truck in 1968, and it probably arrived on one truck, with the exception of the concrete in the basement. My parents' house, the same thing. It arrived on one truck, one flatbed truck, and it can go to the dump in the equivalent of one flatbed truck. That is light years different than a 8 or 10,000 square foot house that was built in 1995. But your system counts my little house and a 10,000 square foot house the same way. The impacts are vastly different. So here again, my desire for you is this was an interesting experiment, and I get it. I would rather not have construction impacts in my neighborhood, but this was a bad idea, and it has just proven to be a bad idea. So get rid of it and have that work session sooner than later. Thank you.
Thanks. Can I ask you a question or two?
Okay.
Are you looking to get a demo permit? Are you?
I have absolutely no desire to get a demolition permit, except this city council or the 2022 city council said to me, you better go, in order to protect your asset, you better go apply for a demolition permit. You know, I had no thought of it, absolutely no thought of it until city council took action. And, you know, for Mike and Julie Maple, you know, I hope to live in my house for the rest of my life.
Good.
For my parents, it's a little bit different situation.
Yeah.
They're close to the end of their life. And, you know, their house, it's a perfectly lovely house for them. But when they're gone, I'm sorry, the house, it was a completely appropriate house in 1968, but it's not a completely appropriate house in 2023 or 2030 or whatever. And it's run its life.
Yeah.
You know, and so when it's time, it's time. Don't make me play the lottery so that I can try and figure out how to have an appropriate exit for a house when its time is up.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate you, Mike. Other members of the public, this is a public hearing on ordinance number 23. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council table. All right. So two items here. We want to discuss what the target date for a work session looks like. And two, we need to discuss approval of 23 with or without additional allotments. So,
Mr. Mayor, can I just make a brief comment for the record? There have been some written
yes.
comments, and I just wanted the record clear. I'm only aware of one of them. I don't know if there are others. There was a written email that I was copied on Duke City Council from Mr. Bryan that he wanted noted as a public comment. I
Yes.
don't know if there were others that were submitted, but I wanted that one noted.
I appreciate that. So for the record, we are entering Mr. Bryan's email into the record for public comment. Thank you to Chris for supplying that to us. And I don't see any others and have not seen any others.
Not this round.
Not this round.
There was one submitted during first reading, actually two submitted during first reading.
First reading.
That came in through council's address.
And those have been, the clerk has gotten those. All right. Council, let's take care of some easy stuff. What's our range for the work session? What do we think?
I'll have to leave this up to city manager's office to confirm. I think there's some discussion about changing the number of work sessions that the council may have available, and so.
So, yeah, I actually need an opportunity to speak with men, so I have an understanding of their ability to prepare for that work session, and so I won't be able to answer that question here tonight.
Okay. What we've been told to this point is that we're going to be trying to get it as soon as possible. We feel like this is job one right now for getting into the new year, so.
Yeah, I think comments were all pointing towards first quarter, early on as soon as possible.
All right. Council discussion on ordinance number 23. Go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah, I think your comments have probably come before mine.
Okay. Just wanted to speak on this. We've spoken on so many times, but I do think this program is fundamentally flawed. I do think if like a Chrissy Pope home or someone like that has a non-energy efficient home and they're looking to demolish it and rebuild in the new code energy efficient way, we've already solved the problem. I don't think there was ever a need for regulation on this. I think this was a gross overreaction to the number of demolitions given out in 2020 during COVID. So it was a very unique year. And then the council overreacted and made it 6, which was the average, which I also think is like a gross overreaction to go down to an average rather than go above an average, because sometimes you have more, sometimes you have less, but now you've commodified something that you didn't need to commodify. The lottery extended idea, by the way, of like if you lost the lottery and you ended up winning it, or you end up losing the lottery next year and you ended up getting permits for following years. The idea behind that was to give someone certainty for when they could have a demolition permit. And honestly, I feel like full disclosure would be give someone certainty and then until we can scrap the program. Hopefully before a new election, but honestly, I do not think this program will hold up much longer beyond like future elections, because I just do not see it being a viable program because it just doesn't make sense. And lastly, and I hate to make this comment, but it's just the way I've seen it, this program to me feels very petty. And not from like a ComDev point of view, sorry you reacted, it really just feels like it's sort of like an us against them mentality. And I don't know who the us versus them is, but I just feel a lot of personal strife going on with this program from the beginning. And I feel like it's hidden behind good intent and policy, but it really has just come off petty to me, and another reason why I'd love to see it scrapped and we can move on and work towards energy efficiency in homes, work towards waste diversion, and work towards efficiency and speediness in building new homes, whether that be the permitting process or construction. And those are the things I think we're looking for. This program, no matter how much you change it, will not solve that. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. All right. Well, like I said, yes, Bill.
I was waiting to see if others had comments, and feel free to go ahead with yours. I'm happy to.
I'm just going to try to move towards getting something that we can vote on and move forward. Yeah, I have a lot of comments that I could say, but I don't really need to. I mean, I've heard from my community. I represent my community up here. I know that there's a faction of that community that doesn't want regulated demolition and doesn't really have the same concerns around the impacts to my community that I see. But I'll save those for when we get into this work. You know, I continue to say, I want to make this program work. I want to make it work for not just longtime locals, but locals. I want it to work in many different directions. During the moratorium, we didn't get to a program that we all really, you know, support going forward. So that's the work that we're going to get to, and I'm excited to get to it. That's my comments. But other than that, I want to ask for additional allotments as we go into a lottery program, if that's what's going to happen.
I'd like to share a few comments.
Go right ahead.
Thanks. I think Sam's comments were all very thoughtful and intelligent, and I share his feelings on every single one of those in this case. This was an experiment and an overreaction to an unusual period of demand during COVID. I don't believe that we will ever see that period of demand again, and this was a knee-jerk reaction that has caused a lot of consequences and will continue to cause unintended consequences, as I spoke out upon when this idea was being conceptualized. As I said then, I guarantee there will be an instance when a non-historic home is raised above a site, excavated, there's an excavation that happens below the home, and a sub 40% demolition is pursued. That is certainly more intensive for neighbors, very extended construction duration. Preserving a home that is not worthy of being preserved is energy inefficient, not built to today's standards, and ultimately is an inferior product to what would be built in less time and less impact on the community. That makes no sense to me. The entire program makes no sense to me. I don't know who's benefiting from this other than the attorneys. I'm jealous of them at the moment because I'd like to get paid for all of this time and thought that I've put into this process. It's a disaster. It's as big of a disaster as the Living Lab was. Those of you who implement it will have egg on your face when you realize some of these unintended consequences, and I urge you to reconsider this program, to eliminate it, to work towards things that do have a tangible, meaningful impact on this community, and not be embarrassed by the tragedies of this program. Thank you.
Thanks. Bill, have you gotten demo permits in the city of Aspen?
I have one demo allotment. I don't have the commensurate building permit.
Have you done any before that? Have you gotten demo permits before that? I'm just asking questions because you're in this business.
I don't understand what you're asking.
I'm just asking, have you gotten demo permits before?
Have I been allowed to tear down a house before this demo allotment system was in place?
Yeah.
Is that the question? Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thanks. I was just wondering. I don't know your.
I didn't know what you were
I
asking.
don't know your association with it or not. So I was just wondering. I don't know. Thank you for your comments. Ward.
Yeah, I acknowledge Bill and Sam and Mike in your objections and characterization of the program. I think that for us that we're sitting at the table to identify the pressures at the time as being highly unusual, we didn't have the benefit of 2 years to make that judgment. I think that if we felt that there was a tremendous impact going on and that we had to do something to try to mitigate the impacts that have been identified in memos and on the public record and in the many whereas clauses of the ordinance. If we as a council had done nothing and the trends had continued, then we would have been guilty of not doing anything to react to desperate times. We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know what the rentals were going to be. We didn't know how many people were be coming into town. All we knew is that there was a tremendous amount of activity going on, and felt that it was our responsibility to protect the fabric of Aspen. So our intentions, I think, were good, and they can be characterized in hindsight as being overreaction, and gross overreaction, being petty, all of the terms that you use in characterizing the outcome of the program. You know, I'm not arguing with you on that. I'm just saying that what we did when we did it was a reaction to what was going on at the time. I think that the fact that there was a first come, first serve was very flawed, and I don't hold anybody that took advantage of that. If we made a loophole in the system and somebody took advantage of it, it's our fault for making a loophole in the program. So I hold no ill will to somebody that, quote, gamed the system because there was an opportunity to game it, and frankly, good on you. But it was definitely gamed. It was flawed. I think the intent was good. At the time that it was enacted, there were a tremendous amount of impact going on, and the trends have dropped off. They're not what they were, but we had no way of knowing that. And we will be making decisions at this table, this group of 5, with no crystal ball to know what's going on in the future. We'll do the best we can to do what we think is best. And I think that's all we can be expected to do. And what happens if it's egg on my face or whatever negative effects come from it, it's not because it wasn't well intended. So I support this in the as a stopgap measure for a true lottery. I think that we could have a discussion about additional allotments. I want to have a real thorough look at this, and the outcome may be that it's done away with, that we dump the program. But we'll, as soon as we can, first quarter, I want to have a full discussion of the program. In the short term, I would move to approve ordinance 23, and I would like to see an amendment on it. And it's on page 2, and I don't know that it's clear that if you have X number of allotments available and Y number of applications and Y is greater than X, that I would like to see all of the numbers drawn so that you have an order of draw, so that if some of those that receive allotments no longer want to pursue it or for some reason don't qualify, that we have an order of the draw in the future. And I would also like to amend it to have 2 additional allotments available for 2024.
If I may, could you provide some further clarification of the first point of that?
Yeah, and I made a note on it in the copy of the PDF I brought. Doesn't have it on it, but in reading it, it says that available allotments will be granted to the numbers drawn by the process. Applicants and their representatives will be notified by email of the time and place of the lottery and welcome to be present during the lottery selection. I just want all the numbers to be drawn. If there are 20 applications and 4 available, I want to know who not only were the first 4, but what order the next ones were in.
Fair enough. Okay, I understand that.
Thanks, Ward. John?
Not sure if I want to read comments now or save them for the work session.
There is a motion on the table with a proposed amendment, as I understand.
Yes. I move to approve ordinance 23 with clarification and with 2 additional allotments.
In that case, I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
I just ask for staff to give us the numerical numbers to go into section 2, please.
Let me pull up the packet. So I think the new number would be 8 for the total number of allotments for 2024. That would be the 6 that were originally granted. There are 2 remaining, and so that additional 2 would take the available allotments to 4. So on top of the 6 that were granted by ordinance number 13 and the current land use code, the 2 additional would take the number in 2024 up to 8. And for the lottery that would ensue, there would be 4 available allotments during that to the lottery.
Understood. That's the way that it's written in section 2?
Section 2, the first X in the packet I have, the first X would be 8, the second X would be 4. Originally, that was X and Y. I don't know what happened to my Y. But,
Okay.
I'd like to move to amend Ward's motion to increase the total number of 2024 demolition and allotments to 99.
I really just want to ask Tori, since I feel like I know John's answer unless you want to go, but is anyone willing to go higher than 2?
No,
No.
I'm not. This is, again, we are going to get to work on this process in the first quarter. We are going to, no,
I just wanted to ask.
yeah.
So,
I'm not interested.
anyway, I'm happy moving on now.
The motion dies for lack of a second. Ward's motion is on the table with clarity in the numbers in section 2. And you understand, they're describing the numbers that will go into section 2, and that is in keeping with the motion that you made.
Yes.
John, your second is still valid. There is further discussion at this time.
I want to make sure we all understand on Ward's motion that's on section 1, lottery process. It
Yes.
sounds like what you're suggesting is that all applications be given a number and be drawn and given a number in order of the draw.
Yes.
Staff understands that amendment to section 1.
So that
accomplish what?
if somebody that wins in the lottery process does not move to pull their demo permit or submit a building permit, that
Then there's an order for the
then it
next
could
in
go,
line.
it would go in the order so that we would not be re-lotterying it.
Do you understand that demo allotment is valid for 3 years from the date of publication?
Yeah,
So 3 years plus from the date of the lottery, you're going to determine.
no.
That's the only way to do it, because you have 3 years to file for a building permit, and you don't get, ComDev does not like to issue standalone demolition permits.
What Ward is saying is if somebody is not to pursue it.
The only way to pursue it is by filing for a building permit.
As I understood the comment from Councilmember Hohenstein, is that with the folks that would apply during the lottery process, if they had complete and compliant applications, they were issued a number, that the intention was to pull all of them and create an order for all of the applications that were subject to the lottery. I probably need a little further explanation of the intent, but as I understood, the concern is, should council, take some action as opposed to the discussion that we're proposing, that there would be a way to respond fairly to the folks who participate in the lottery but were not issued an allotment.
Is that your intent, Warren?
Yes.
Okay, understood then. Sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you. Okay. Could we have a roll call vote for ordinance number 23 as amended?
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Guth,
No.
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
No.
Mayor Tory.
Yes.
Thank you, council.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Next item is the Old Powerhouse Preservation Project scope. This is coming back to us after our last meeting on this item. There were still some questions around some of the items that were proposed as part of powerhouse preservation and adaptation, reusification.
Never heard that one. It's a good one.
Go for it.
Rob Schober, Asset Director. We have Evan Pletcher, Project Manager, and Jack Wheeler with Concept One Group. We're back in response to the work session we had several weeks back to try and refine and get the go-ahead on the old powerhouse preservation project scope. We did bring back a scope for what we heard was kind of what I would say a middle-of-the-road price range, about $6.5 million that will hit on the main preservation items for the building, as well as allowing that building to be used as a community space. We did, as a part of the memo, include some adults with some rough pricing for those adults to be considered by council.
You have any presentation, or are you ready for questions?
Just a discussion.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Rob. First question would be, could you explain what we looked at as alternatives to the asset storage space, if that's the correct terminology?
So the space is the asset shop space.
Shop space.
That is a core function of our department here in downtown core. You asked us to look at space at Streets Department, Parks Department. They are full up. They do not have room for our tools, for our people. So as included in the base project scope is a reduced space with some storage above our existing shop area. And in the add-all, it includes a functional trash enclosure. That's one thing that we don't have out there, as well as unconditioned storage. So essentially, the base project scope, we're working within the footprint of the building as it is. And then the add-all would be additional space.
Okay, and that add-alt is the $250,000. That's the new piece of construction on the northwest side, right?
Correct.
Thanks. And is there any reason why trash couldn't be handled with freestanding dumpsters that weren't in an enclosure?
I don't think that's allowed. Right now, we are ferrying trash over here to City Hall on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I read that, but why can't you use a freestanding dumpster like in every alley in Aspen?
Well, we'll be required to meet the bear-resistant requirements for trash enclosure.
I understand that, but there are bear-resistant dumpsters.
Just to answer quickly, I think when new projects go through some sort of redevelopment or remodel of a certain scope and scale, we do our level best to try to work with the property owner across town to get trash in a building, in an enclosure, improved bear safety, improved aesthetic, et cetera. Sometimes that's not possible. And that's very true of downtown and the alleys. But when possible, we try to get improvements to trash enclosures when properties are going through some sort of a redevelopment.
Okay, thanks. On the, let me try to get my bearings here. Northwest corner of the parking lot, could a separate trash enclosure be constructed at a much lesser cost?
We could have a trash enclosure only. As far as cost, it's going to be in the hill. So I'm not prepared.
Not in the hill, just northwest, across from the pond, northwest of the parking lot.
Without knowing exactly where you're pointing at, it's hard to say. We do have snow storage. I was going to say that is a snow storage area that the streets hauls snow in there for temporary storage until it gets trucked out of town. It's also currently where we have a lot of towed vehicles that get booted.
Well, I'm not concerned where a towed vehicle gets stored. Could be anywhere else for all I'm concerned. Yeah, I'm concerned about adding significant project costs that doesn't seem necessary. I think we've made great progress, and thank you for that. I think most of this makes a lot of sense to me. You know, I'm certainly not supportive of the all-electric MEP. You continue not to be supportive of the geothermal attempt there. I do like the flexibility that you've built in for future public gathering. I just don't think that asset shop space is a compatible use in the long term. And if there's an alternative place to put it, now, I'd rather do it sooner rather than later. It seems like you've exhausted those possibilities. I hope we can look to other possibilities in the longer term. Because if this does become a community meeting space, gathering space, event space of some kind, you know, shop space to me is not a compatible neighbor to that.
So to be clear, these are big round numbers. It's conceptual pricing. I don't want to get too hung up on, you know, you brought up concerns about this space. I don't want to get too hung up on a $250,000 item for a $6.5 million project. We are going to refine this pricing and scope, and we are going to be back in front of you. And maybe if the pricing's coming in on the high end of things, for sure, that's one of the first things to go. If the pricing's coming in lower, then maybe that's something we can, again, reconsider.
Okay, great. Yeah, I guess that would be my final request. Like, again, generally quite supportive of this project. I don't think we need to construct a new addition to the building. I don't want to further cement this building as a shop storage asset storage and shop space. That's something that I would like to see go away in the long term. So if there's an alternative where we construct a separate trash enclosure somewhere else on the property, I think we could do that for a lot less than $250,000, and I would be much more supportive of that. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see geothermal in this scope.
Not in the current scope, but I just wanted to reiterate that.
Okay.
I don't know if that was directed to me or not.
Well, it was just a question. Make sure that I'm reading everything. As far as the MEP, are we looking at that at this facility because that is a direction we are liking to go? You know, I'm supportive of it. I'm not really looking for a test case, but I'm supportive of it. I just want to know why are we pursuing it? Because that's kind of been council discussion and the direction that we're trying to go with environmental concerns. What do we think?
Can you be clear what direction you're referring to?
The all-electric heat pumps, heating system, all that stuff being all-electric.
So we heard concern with council of project cost. That is a major cost driver for this project, a complete electrical retrofit. We're just outlining the cost. Whether or not you choose to make it all electric or not, that's up to council.
And it was originally presented as the preferred option for this project based on past council project direction.
Okay, and I agree with that. My concern is that, you know, we have these conversations every once in a while, and we hear that this technology is not necessarily ready, or its applicability is so I'm just wondering, right? I want to make informed decisions and go in a direction that's smart, not just.
So heat pumps is what we're proposing here are for sure a proven technology. They work great. A complete retrofit to the building is expensive. Upgraded service, we're tearing out all the existing MEP. They're the highest paid trades that we bring in. There's all kinds of things that drive that cost. That's, again, that's just the reality of the situation of a complete electrical conversion of a building. And it's has nothing to do with the technology being proven. The cost to heat and cool a building with electricity in general is more expensive than with gas. The utilities are more expensive, so the ongoing operational costs are more, and we're just highlighting those for you. That's all.
Thanks. Bill?
One follow-up, Rob. In the base project scope or the current defined project scope that you've presented here, 6.2 to 6.8 million, how much of that 6.2 to 6.8 is the non-all-electric MEP system?
About 1.6 million.
1.6. So to be clear, this would be an incremental $1 million for an all-electric MEP system, meaning the MEP of this quite small building would be $2.6 million if that direction were pursued, which again, I am not supportive of. Thank you.
And why aren't you supportive of it?
It's an irresponsible use of money. It's a small building, spending $2.6 million on the mechanical, electrical, plumbing on a small building. You're just not going to see any sort of return on investment in terms of energy usage or dollars.
Thanks.
Just irresponsible to me.
Thanks. Other questions? Input?
Well, go ahead.
You're up, Ward.
Ward, you spoke first.
You're up.
I thought we spoke at the same time.
I didn't say anything, I just hit the button.
Looking at this, is a bigger scheme, you know, that we have to get this done before we can get the armory done, and the community wants the armory to get done as soon as possible. So I look at speed as of the essence on this project, and so I'm looking at a lighter touch. I would rather keep the cost down on this. I know I think I might be in the minority here, but I would build it without the increased public use flexibility, because it'd be less expensive, take less time, and give the community use of the armory sooner. I think that we do have a fiduciary responsibility. One of our top goals is greenhouse gas, but the cost, the added cost for, you know, a 95% or more efficient gas for this seems to me to be the responsible way to go in this building. So I wouldn't, although I would like to see all electric, I don't think that at this time it's feasible, economical, and as Bill pointed out, certainly we're never going to recoup the costs. The operating costs are going to be way more expensive. So although my heart is in all electric, I do have responsibility for trying to keep a handle on the pocketbook. So I'd like to see a lighter touch, get it done as soon as possible so we can get on with the armory, which I think the community and people at this table are really interested in getting online as soon as possible. So as Mr. Maple pointed out earlier in his comments, speed is of the essence, get it done. So I would support not the increased costs and time to build it out for increased public use with all of the bullet items that were in the memo, and to go with the gas. And certainly, I think we eliminated reluctantly the geothermal last time around. So no geothermal, gas, and to build it out as quickly as possible without increasing public use.
So last time we were in front of you, I made a comment about like doing this a la carte, and you said that's not the way to do it. So basically, our options are what you have under the project scope and those 3 additions, and that's the question in front of us, correct?
Correct.
So with that, the project scope looks good. It is what it is. It's more expensive than we'd like, but it is what it is. My only real question is the extra $150,000 cost for the public gathering space enhancement. I see that's in the project scope, or at least the ability to house a public gathering space. Yeah, would you speak to that for a second?
Yeah, so the add-all is creating that space in the, it would be the east side of the building with either a roll-up door or some kind of doors that opens up onto the lawn area with a patio.
Okay, and that's not in the project scope, that is just strictly an addition?
Correct.
Okay. I think to make it very clear, I value and prioritize the armory first and foremost. I know how expensive that is going to be, and I want to put most of our time and resources towards that. So with the options we have presented here, I think it's good to go with the project scope, and I am supportive of the extra $150,000 for the opening in the south gable end wall. I do think that would be a nice touch and give us a lot more options for future use. And then I just want to comment on the other things as far as the city, shop space, and trash enclosure. I do believe that belongs somewhere else, if it can go somewhere else, because I do hope this is a gathering space, so that's not really a priority for me, especially with the cost. And then the all-electric MEP system, it's unfortunate that is so expensive. I hope as a city we can, I don't know, contribute to people that are studying this sort of thing to help bring these costs down in the future. I think that's where our priorities should be. But in the meantime, it is irresponsible to do this. And just as like a last comment, as we go towards like building IQ and that sort of thing, I think this is a sad example of what it costs to be all electric sometimes. And that's why I do hope we can prioritize making this make sense in the future as far as making things all electric, because it is super unfortunate as we listen to COP28 in Dubai and we try to go towards an all-electric future. Sadly, I think the economy and what's in people's pockets like matters most at this time, and I think that's why our priority as a council and as a city should be making electric make sense and making the lack of eliminating fossil fuels make sense. But this is just a really clear example of why it doesn't at this point, and I really hope it does soon. Really soon.
Thanks. So you are supportive of the 150,000, the base scope, the 150,000. You are not supportive of city shop space and trash enclosure? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not supportive of that or the all-electric MEP system, unfortunately. I wish I was.
All right. John, you have any input here? We're wrestling with direction and we'd like to get it going.
Yeah, this is a lot of choices. I'm also disappointed that the MEP system costs so much. I was also, was hoping for some more geothermal news about that site across the street from Heron Park to find out what is possible in the future. At any rate, I agree with the sentiment at the table that the armory is most important. I think the trash enclosure, if there was another place for the city to put it, we already would have done that. So I'm okay with the trash enclosure right where it's planned. I do like the idea of the opening door on the east side for future community use, and yeah, I think it's important to get this project done so we can focus on the armory. Thanks.
Thank you. I am supportive of your project scope, 6.2 to 6.8. I as well support the addition of the door for 150,000. I'm also supportive of city shop space and trash enclosure. You know, unless I'm looking at this incorrectly, that's going to be something that's going to be necessary to be there no matter what. When and if this is utilized for public space and gathering, et cetera, it will not, I would assume that it would not be used for city shop space and trash enclosure at that time. Is that kind of the plan?
It'd be council's purview to direct usage.
The trash enclosure would probably forever
The trash
stay for
enclosure
that use.
has to be there, so I'm supportive of that. So we have a little break here. We don't have support for the all-electric MEP systems. And Ward, all we're looking here, the difference here is your lack of support for the $150,000 to make that that east end.
My concern's not with $150,000 for the door, it's on page 399, create the ability to house a public gathering space at the old powerhouse, relocate and enlarge the bathrooms to meet increased building, adding stub ends, enclosing the porch, improvements to maximize the functionality of the shop, upsizing and improve mechanical systems, and provide, and I don't object to this, provide educational opportunities and historic photo storyboards for the facilities. But the other ones are more important, is that in order to allow for future public use, we need to have those additional expenditures and increasing the scope, and I think it's well beyond $150,000 for the door.
To be clear, Tori, I'm in support of that door, so I think we have majority support on that door already.
I'm not gonna argue about a door.
It's not about the door. My question is, Ward's other areas of concern. The bathroom remodel would be done regardless?
Correct.
Yeah, the door is just an enhancement to the public gathering space. That's what it is. The public gathering space happens regardless in the base scope as
So
presented.
we're only talking $150K difference between flexibility to making it, I thought we had to increase the size of the bathrooms, and
No,
is that gonna happen anyway?
that's gonna happen anyway within that 6.2 to 6.8 million. The 150,000 is exclusively for adding that opening to the large public gathering space.
Okay, all right.
All right, it sounds like direction from council is for the base scope that you've outlined here, and then the public gathering space enhancement and the shop space and trash enclosure, but not the all-electric MEP at this time.
Was there majority on the shop space?
I think so.
Clear on that.
I think so, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, everything on this project's been done by resolution or motion, and I'd request council be consistent with that.
All right.
And let us know which form you would like it in.
All right. Since I just said it, I'll make the motion. I move to approve the Old Powerhouse Preservation Project scope as listed in our memo under project scope 6.2 to 6.8 million for those items, and adding the two alternates of the public gathering space enhancement of $150,000 and the city shop space and trash enclosure for $250,000.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Further discussion?
My only further discussion would be, please, let's look at maybe separating the trash enclosure to make the building that's in the hillside, which is very expensive, a little less expensive. And if we can remove that function, and if that helps downsize the building and reduce the cost, I don't know why we wouldn't do that.
Heads are nodding. They're looking at that. They're hoping to come back and have some value engineering here that's gonna maybe lower our overall budget. Okay?
So I would say if we're swinging one way or another, from what we're telling you, 6.2 to 6.8 million with these others, we would come back to council and have a discussion of what needs to be included or what might need to go.
Thanks.
Could we have a roll call vote on the motion, please?
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Guth,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thought you would. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion for adjournment this evening? Could we have a roll call vote for adjourning our last meeting of the year?
Happy holidays, all.
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Guth,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes.